Hi guys, we are on chapter 2 of Wayside School Gets a Little Stranger. We have a nice rainstorm coming through at my house right now. It's very relaxing. Chapter 2, a message from the principal. The principal? Looks like he's having a good time while the school's closed. Damien hurried up the stairs. He couldn't wait to see Mrs. Jules, his favorite teacher in the whole world. But the 30th floor was a lot higher up than he remembered, even if there was no 19th. By the time he got up there, his legs hurt, his side ached, and he had a blister on the back of his ankle where it rubbed against his sneaker. He stumbled into the room and collapsed on the floor. "Hi, Mrs. Jules," he gasped. "Hi, Damien. Welcome back," said Mrs. Jules. Damien looked up at her. Something seemed different about her, but he wasn't sure what it was. "Oh, Damien, would you do a favor for me?" "Sure," said Damien. "I left my pencil in the office. Would you mind going down and getting it for me?" "No problem," said Damien. "It's yellow, and it has a pointed one end and a red eraser at the other." Damien got to his feet and headed down the stairs. One by one, the other children staggered into the classroom, huffing and puffing. They were all out of shape. Still, they were very excited to be back in Mrs. Jules' class. Shouts of joy could be heard from every corner of the room. Mrs. Jules held up 2 fingers. All the children became quiet, especially Joy. She stopped shouting. Mrs. Jules told the children to sit at their old desks. "So, did anyone learn anything at your other schools?" she asked. Mac raised his hand. Oh, he grunted. "Yes, Mac?" asked Mrs. Jules. "Civilization," said Mac. "What about civilization?" asked Mrs. Jules. "Well, we learned it," said Mac. "Oh, that's very impressive," said Mrs. Jules. "Would you like to tell the class something about civilization?" Mac thought for a moment. "I don't remember," he said, "but I know we learned it." "Oh, that's good, Mac," said Mrs. Jules. "Anyone else learn anything?" Rhondy raised her hand. "Evaporation," she said. "Good," said Mrs. Jules. "What is evaporation?" "Oh, I don't know," said Rhondy. Dana raised her hand. "I learned about exaggeration," she said. "It was all my teacher ever talked about. We had like 10,000 tests on it, and the teacher would kill you if you didn't spell it right." "That's very good, Dana," said Mrs. Jules, "and I can see that you learned your lesson well." "I did?" asked Dana. Mrs. Jules shrugged. "Well, I guess we'll just continue where we left off." Just then, Mr. Kidswatter's voice came over the PA system. "Good morning, boys and girls." Mr. Kidswatter was the principal. He paused a moment because he thought every kid in school was saying, "Good morning, Mr. Kidswatter," back to him. Nobody said it. Sherry buried her head in her huge coat, closed her eyes, and went to sleep. "Welcome back to Wayside School," said Mr. Kidswatter. "I know I'm sure glad to be back. It was wonderful to see all your bright and chipper faces this morning. I missed every single one of you. And welcome back to Miss Mush, too. Today's lunch menu will be baked liver and purple sauce. Miss Mush actually cooked this before the school closed, but she assures me it is still as tasty as ever." "You're right," said Myron. "And a safety reminder. Now it has been a while since you've had to rush up and down the stairs, and I want to make sure there are no accidents. So remember this simple rule. When you go up the stairs, stay to your right. When you go down the stairs, stay to your left. That way there should be no problems. Okay, let's all have a good day. And remember, I'm your friend, and you're my friends, and if you ever need a friend, you can always come to me." "Isn't that lovely?" Mrs. Jules said. "What a bunch of baloney. There I was, lying on a beach in Jamaica, when suddenly I get a fax that a dumb school was back and open. Well, those kids better not bother me. My friends? That's a joke. Like I would really want to be friends with those little snot-nosed—" "What? Don't tell me to shut up. You shut up. What's on?" "You mean they're hearing what I'm saying right this very second?"
Well, how do you know? How do you turn it off? What button? I don't see a red button. There is no red button. Oh, here it is.
Mr. Kidswatter left something on. Do you know what he left on? That's right, he left the intercom on. Do you think he was really being a nice principal? Did he mean all those things he said at first? No. He must be a what kind of principal? A mean principal. Well, let's go ahead and read chapter 3 since chapter 2 was so short. Our next chapter is called Poetry. Chapter 3, Poetry. Mrs. Jules told everyone to pick a color and write a poem about it. Huh? Said Joy. For example, said Mrs. Jules, if brown was your favorite color, you might write, at the circus I saw a clown, on his face was a great big frown. His sad eyes were big and brown. Could you repeat that just a little bit slower? Asked Joy. Mrs. Jules repeated it for her. Oh, I'm going to do purple, said Rondi. Rondi loved anything purple. You can't do purple, said Allison. I'm doing it. So, said Rondi, Mrs. Jules didn't say two people couldn't do the same color. But purple is my favorite color in the whole wide world, said Allison. Rondi and Allison were best friends, but Allison always got her way. So Rondi switched to blue. Joe raised his hand. I don't know what rhymes with red, he said. Mrs. Jules gave him a few suggestions. Bed, lead, wed. Think of the words that end in ed. Oh, I get it, said Joe, and he set to work. Rondi tried to think of words that rhymed with blue. She raised her hand. Mrs. Jules, she said, I chose blue. Can I rhyme that with zoo? Yes, that would be a very good rhyme, said Mrs. Jules. How about glue? Asked Rondi. Yes, that rhymes too, said Mrs. Jules. Oh, I know. How about stew? Said Rondi. Why don't we just pick one and get started, said Mrs. Jules. Rondi smiled. This is fun, she told Allison. There are lots of words that rhyme with blue. Allison grunted. Why do you think Allison's grunting? Think about it. What's her color? That's right. Nothing rhymed with purple. In her mind, Allison had gone through every letter of the alphabet. Arple, burple, curple, durple, all the way down to zerple. But after making a big stink over it with Rondi, she couldn't switch colors now. Rondi was just about to start her poem when she got an even better idea. Love that's true. Poets are always writing about love that's true, aren't they, Mrs. Jules? Sometimes, said Mrs. Jules. Rondi smiled, except she really didn't know much about true love. Morning dew, she said. Poets write about morning dew, too, don't they? I believe so, said Mrs. Jules. Dana walked to Mrs. Jules' desk. I can't think of anything that rhymes with pink, she complained. Oh, I'm sure you'll think of something, said Mrs. Jules, and Mrs. Jules winked. I can't think, said Dana. My mind's on a blank. I'm no good at poetry. I stink. Why don't you just keep trying, said Mrs. Jules. Dana returned to her seat. She started to put her name on her paper, but her pen wouldn't write. Great, she complained. Now my pen's out of ink. Hey, Dana, whispered John. Do you want to borrow my pen? Sure, said Dana. Too bad. I'm using it, said John. Then he started cracking up. Meanwhile, Allison was going through the alphabet for the 10th time. Merple, nurple, whoople, quirple, she thought. My left shoe! Exclaimed Rondi. You better choose something, Rondi, and get started, advised Mrs. Jules. I got it, said Rondi. A bird that flew! At the end of the day, the children turned in their poems. The poem Yellow by Kathy. I don't feel too well. Oh, I don't know what to tell. Oh, I'm sick and I smell. Oh, my barf. It's yellow! Green by Stephen. The swimming pool has lots of chlorine. It turned my hair green. Brown by Joy. At the circus I saw a clown. On his face was a great big frown. His sad eyes were big and brown. That's the poem that Mrs. Jules wrote, isn't it? Mm-hmm. She just copied it. The poem read by Joe. The fire truck is red. It hurried. The siren wailed. The house burned. The fireman saved the baby who screamed. Did anything rhyme with red? No, but he did use words with the letters ED on the end. Pink by Dana. My favorite color is pink. John is a rat fink. Purple by Allison. The baby won't stop crying. His face is turning purple. Will anything make him feel better? I bet a burple. And then Blue by Rondi. And that was as far as she got. Blue by Rondi. All right. Hope you guys are having a great morning. Stay inside if the weather gets too bad. Bye.